Welcome back, everybody, to another episode. Here we are, Pete. It's Freedom, Flexibility, and Finances. I'm Chris Angel, your co-host, here with Pete, your host of the most. And Pete, today we're talking about finding your inner bulldog. I'm so curious to kind of unpack this with you. What is the inner bulldog?
Well, Chris, it was kind of funny when we sat down and we were trying to find names for our coaching business and looking at the website and going through it. I was looking for something where somebody could get aggressive with their life and, get aggressive with it, latch onto it, and have something to hang on to. And then I came across the bulldog. Be a bulldog. Everybody's always telling you to be a bulldog. The fighting bulldogs. It was just one of those things that caused
the British bulldogs,
right?
If you go back in history, the British bulldogs.
British bulldogs, and it just sounds just totally like I'm going to take charge. Yeah. Well, then you start thinking about a bulldog. The bulldog's got a smaller face, so it can get closer to things. Mm-hmm. Likewise, you've met a bulldog in real life, right? Yeah. One of the friendliest critters you've ever met on the face of this planet.
Right.
They love everybody. Yeah. So the more that I started realizing that I really liked people and I wanted to get close to them, and I wanted to be able to get aggressive with my life, I realized that for me to get aggressive with my life, I really had to get comfortable with who I was. Mm-hmm. And part of who I am is I absolutely love relationships and I really don't like people, which is one of the funniest things when you start thinking about it.
Right,
because how can you love relationships and not really like people?
Yeah.
Well, I love people when they are on target or achieving or winning the game.
Yep.
I love people when they're wanting to make that effort to be able to change their life and move forward. Mm-hmm. So when we started defining what it was, we wanted to work on mindset, on internal programming, attitudes, objectives, plans, day-to-day activities. We wanted to increase profits, mitigate losses, reduce expenses in our business and our personal lives so that we could increase our net life now. Mm-hmm. So in the grand scheme of things, it's a combination of everything that's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Figuring out what's the first link, as John Maxwell says, what's the first link that I have to pick up that when I pull this, everything else attaches to it and the load is lighter.
Got it. So your inner bulldog is not just attitude, but that's a part of it, but it's understanding what?
It's understanding what are you compassionate about? What makes you tick? There's 2 days in our lives when we wake up. The day where we want to roll over and go back to bed, and the day where we want to wake up and attack life. And that attitude of wanting to wake up and attack life, why? I enjoy the relationships. I enjoy the interactions with the people that I come in contact with.
Yeah.
And I get excited to go interact with them.
Yeah.
There's very few days where I roll back over in bed and say, I just don't want to deal with people today.
Yeah. What are the biggest challenges do you think? So what we're saying is like, it's important to find what makes you tick. That's, when you find how you're wired, what makes you tick, you start to find your inner bulldog, the thing that can get close enough to people when you want to, but and latch onto the things that are important to you. But I would say for a lot of people, that's not actually their experience of their business or their day-to-day life. Like there are things that get in the way of me living out of my inner bulldog. So what are some of the obstacles that you see people have to living that way?
Some of the things that we run into are, they don't have standards in their life, which, if we look at a bulldog that's a pet, they've got a fence. They've got to stay within that fence. That's their world. Mm-hmm. And if they want to get out of that fence, the owner takes them out of that fence on rare occasion to go for a walk in the park or go play ball.
Right.
And, with a bulldog, they don't deal well with the heat. So they're going to go out when it's cooler. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that we have to look at is where are we in life allowing our standards to slip where it's causing us grief? And if we really know what's on the inside of us as far as what makes us tick and what motivates us,
right.
We also know sometimes it's easier to define what we don't like or what we don't want.
Yeah.
And say, what do I have to do so that doesn't happen in my world again?
Right.
And that's that standard that we set. So when we start setting those standards, that's setting it to who we are, and that's embracing the inner bulldog. You know, we talk about relationships during the process of coaching, and you know, my coach put it in perspective of A, B, C's, and D's. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this is an A in my world. If I pick up the phone and call them in the middle of the night, they answer their phone. I know they're putting clothes on and they're coming to my rescue. Likewise, if they call me, I'm doing the same. So how many times in the world do we show up as an A in somebody else's world and they're treating us like a C? And is it okay? Absolutely. There's times where we have to show somebody a better way of living.
Sure.
Yet if that's consistent, that's a drain off of our energy. And we can actually do better by increasing our friends or increasing our relationships and the people we hang out with.
Yeah.
And being okay with, hey, I don't get to spend as much time with that person because they're not adding to my life.
So I like this idea of standards because it actually allows me to set boundaries around what works for my inner bulldog. Like there are some relationships for me that drain me, and I am not my inner bulldog when they're around or when I'm interacting with them. And similarly, there's probably some skills that I have that I do really well, and there's a lot of skills I don't do well. And when I set my life up for being inside of my sweet spot or my skills more, my inner bulldog comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, one of my good things that I'm really good with is developing a new relationship or new opportunity. What I'm not really good at is the step-by-step process to get there.
Yeah.
So I have to draw on other people to understand what they need to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And then I have the ability to set those standards to get there without hurting or harming any of the people around me.
Yeah.
And leveraging their talents to be able to move forward. So embracing your bulldog is also being comfortable with letting somebody else tell you what they think or what's going on. You get empowered because you know who you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter what somebody says or does around you or says behind your back about you.
Yeah.
You just are you, and it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that. So here's the question I want to ask you. If you had to do life inside of as your inner bulldog or do life not as your inner bulldog, which experience of life feels easier?
The embracing my inner bulldog is definitely easier.
Yeah.
And normally the bulldog that I embrace is the happy, lucky, really just love on all sorts of people and friends and relationships.
Yeah.
Yet I know that when I have to set a standard that I'm okay getting aggressive with it because it's protecting me, it's protecting my family, my relationships, my business, most importantly, my time, my overall well-being.
Right. The name of the show is Freedom, Flexibility, and Finances. And I think if I had to sum that up in a word or so, I'd say like what we want in freedom, flexibility, and finances is something that feels good, something that's easy, right? A path of least resistance. And I think when we live inside of our inner bulldog, life is easier. I think that's an obvious answer. I teed it up for you, but I think as obvious an answer as that is, I don't often think that we do things that are in alignment with or honor our inner bulldog.
Right. So let's take and put it on the side and look at, what happens when life happens to us? What's the quantity of frustration? What's your heart rate? How much money do you have to spend when you lose your frustration? Are you helping people that aren't helping you back and there's no return on investment coming back? And return on investment doesn't always have to deal with the money. Sometimes it has to deal with the emotional support. Are they there to support you emotionally when you need it?
Right.
I went through a divorce a few years ago, and I don't wish that on anybody, not even my worst enemy, Chris. And it took me through the emotional low of my life. And it also took me through the emotional high of my life. And what I realized is it was the greatest self-love that I could ever make a decision for myself. And it was also the greatest decision that was going to cause the most emotional harm to me. And when I started walking through that, I had to become okay with my past, but I didn't want it to define me.
Yeah.
So when we don't want something to define us, it allows us to make a decision on what we want to do. And as I started making those decisions, I started saying, this is what defines me. This is who I want to become. So I actually had to go to the end in mind. What does my life look like? What do my finances look like? What sort of freedoms do I want? What sort of flexibility do I want in my schedule? Last year, I spent 6 months, a lot of times traveling an hour and a half south and an hour and a half back during the course of the day to take care of my grandfather. And that was a large time suck. And being a business owner, what happened to top line dollar?
Right.
It went down naturally. So we're living on savings and reserves. Yet, knowing who I was, I still provided for my family during that period of time.
Yeah.
Because I had set standards that I can take care of this, but this has to be done first.
Yeah.
And that's where we defined it.
I really like this. I love that you're bringing the inner game into this show, because I feel like a lot of the work to be done is the inner work. In order to produce an outward result, a lot of times the inner work is the thing that's holding us back. So I love, not just in this episode, but in future episodes, being able to dive into the inner bulldog, the inner game, and looking at just exploring that, because I think that'll be really valuable to people listening.
Absolutely.
Is this the kind of work, Pete, that in your coaching, the kind of stuff that you do, is this the kind of work that you'll get into with people?
Yeah, so we start off with the basic tasks to be able to have conversations to figure out where you're at. You know,
Right.
I feel that one of the things that sets me apart from quite a few of the coaches out there is we actually come and meet you where you're at. There's no judgment in that. It's figuring out what level of game are you playing? Are you here? Are you just starting out?
Right.
And then we want to walk shoulder to shoulder with people. And a lot of times what's driving the business force, or what's driving the stress on the business, is in the personal life. So we do intuitive coaching. And what's intuitive coaching? We figure out the process of everything that's going on, the systems, the standards that you already have in place. And when a question comes to me, we have a relationship where I can ask any question that comes to me, and we have to dissect it. Whether it goes anywhere or not, we just have to dissect it so that we know if it's affecting your world or not. What I've found with intuitive coaching is when we ask those questions, it's actually what's affecting the business, or there's something deeper emotionally that's causing the drive to be in a different direction than what their true vision is for their business or for their life.
That's so refreshing, because so many coaches just come from a scripted, this is what we do and this is the response, and to have something that feels custom to where I'm at, and not just custom to like the first conversation, but you listening, like the intuition part, listening for what you're noticing. Sometimes coaches, they may notice stuff, but they don't give themselves, they don't create the expectation that I'm going to tell you what I'm sensing. And that never becomes part of the conversation.
You know, the other part with that is I'm conversational.
Yeah.
I'm relationship based.
Right.
So I'm not going to be able to cram a conversation or a relationship into 30 minutes.
Yep.
I mean, there's times where we connect with our clients and it's 2 or 3 minutes. It's a quick chat on Voxer.
Yeah.
It's a quick private message back and forth on Facebook Messenger. Sometimes it's a handwritten note back and forth. Yet when we dive into your business, we set aside 15 to 30 minutes and say, hey, let's cover something. Yet I've got time blocked on my calendar to make sure that I take care of you as the client,
right,
and make sure that you get taken care of. Likewise, if we find something that's really just needs fixed right now. You know, I use the analogy, if my car breaks down over the course of the weekend and it needs a new engine so that I can go to work on Monday, I'm going to figure out how to either get a new car or I'm going to put a new engine in that car so I'm still at work.
Right.
So sometimes we have to go to work on who we are, and we're not going to accomplish that over the course of 30-minute calls in 4 weeks and a month.
Right.
We need to do like chiropractic where they do, 3 times a week,
Right.
45-minute sessions to get us moving forward in the direction faster.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. When people start working with you, what's the first step? Like they do a call, and then in that call, is it a free call where you explore what they're looking for? Like how does that relationship start?
The relationship starts with conversations. We go to, people can schedule online with my calendar at kindallikepete.com.
Yeah.
KINDALIKE Pete.com.
Yeah.
And what we do is we set up a 30-minute to an hour conversation, sometimes 2 hours. So the first conversation is always 30 minutes to an hour. We dive into what's going on. Second conversation is going to see if there's anything that we can do. So a lot of times what I find is coaches want to sign a long contract before they even know if what that client needs is in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Yep.
So I want to make sure that what you're needing out of life is in my wheelhouse and that I can help you.
Got it.
Being a coach, we're aligned with several other coaches. So if it's not in my wheelhouse, guess what?
Yeah.
I probably know somebody that can help you out.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And if people want to actually take you up on that, they want to work on their inner bulldog, or they listen to episode 1 on the money map, they can go to kindallikepete.com and schedule time with you and just kind of start that conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Well, good. I mean, Pete, another great episode, the inner bulldog. I'm looking forward to episode 3. Episode 3, we're diving into the agent gap. Like how do we break through this ceiling of 36 units and get to the next level of production as a real estate agent? So Pete, thanks again for your time in this episode. I'll catch you in the next one.
You bet.